My name is Alara Vance, and for 28 years, my family made sure I knew exactly where I stood. My older sister Sloane was the golden child, the one who brought home straight A's, who played the cello at Carnegie Hall's youth program, who got a full-ride scholarship to Stanford Law. At every Sunday dinner, my father, Harold, would raise his glass to her. To Sloane, he'd say, "The future of the Vance family," and then his eyes would drift to me. The silence would stretch for a beat too long. "And Alara is here too," he'd mutter, before taking a sip of his wine. The table would chuckle. My mother, Victoria, would give me a tight-lipped smile that said, "Don't embarrass us. See, I have dyslexia. It was diagnosed when I was 7. For me, words on a page don't stay still. They dance, they blur, they rearrange themselves into a puzzle that takes me 10 times longer to solve than anyone else." My parents didn't see it as a challenge to overcome. They saw it as a flaw, a stain on the perfect Vance image. When I was 16, I asked my mom for a tutor, just someone to help me get through my SATs. She was sitting at her vanity, putting on her diamond earrings. "Oh, honey," she sighed, not even looking at me. "We've spent a fortune on specialists over the years. At some point, we have to be realistic. Not everyone is cut out for academics. Sloane just got all the brains." I was 16. I believed her. I learned to navigate the world in my own way. I became a visual thinker. I saw patterns in things that other people couldn't. I could look at a messy spreadsheet and see the story it was trying to tell. I could listen to a business conversation and draw a map of who really held the power. I didn't know it then, but this was my superpower. The only person who ever saw it was my grandmother, Rose. Grandma Rose wasn't like the rest of them. She was the one who had actually built the Vance family empire, a commercial real estate company called Sterling Rose Holdings from nothing. She started it in 1965 with one tiny office in downtown Chicago and turned it into a multi-million-dollar giant. My father, Harold, just inherited it. He managed it, but he didn't build it. Every Saturday, I would take the bus to Grandma Rose's apartment. She'd make us tea, and she'd spread old contracts and blueprints across her coffee table. "Don't just read the words, Alara," she'd tell me, her eyes twinkling. "Read the structure. See how the pieces connect. Your father reads a contract like a lawyer, looking for loopholes. You, my darling, can read it like an architect." She'd squeeze my hand. "You see things others miss. That's not a disability. It's a different kind of vision." The rest of the family treated me like I was invisible. But with Grandma Rose, I was seen. I was enough. Then, in 2019, she got sick. Pancreatic cancer. I was the only one from the family at her bedside when she passed. My father was at a board meeting. My mother was at a charity gala. Sloane was studying for finals. Just a few months before she died, she called me to her apartment. She was weaker then, but her eyes were still that sharp, knowing blue. She handed me a small carved wooden box. It was old, with brass hinges. "Keep this safe for me, Alara," she whispered. "Don't open it yet. When the time is right, when your father shows you exactly who he is, you'll know what to do with it." I took the box home. I put it in the back of my closet, and I tried to forget about it. I was 23, working a dead-end job, and still hoping that maybe, just maybe, my family would finally see me. They never did. After college, I begged my father for a job at Sterling Rose Holdings. I wanted to be part of the family legacy. He finally agreed. My title? Executive assistant. My salary? $45,000 a year. A few months later, Sloane graduated from law school and joined the company as chief legal counsel. Her starting salary? $285,000. My job was to order lunch, book conference rooms, and make copies. I wasn't invited to a single meeting, but I listened. I watched. And that's when I realized what my grandmother meant. I could see the patterns. I saw the way my father was making deals that were good for his ego, but bad for the company's future. I saw the tension in the boardroom that he was too arrogant to notice. One Tuesday afternoon, the email came. Subject: Position restructuring. Dear Ms. Vance, your position has been eliminated. Effective immediately. They fired me. They didn't even have the decency to say it to my face. That evening, as I was cleaning out my desk, I heard them in my father's office. The walls were thin. My mother was with him. "We can't have her here when Sloane takes over next year," my father was saying. "It looks bad. The CEO's sister working as a secretary. People will ask why she's not in leadership." My mother's voice was soft, almost kind. "We've done everything we could, Harold. Some children just aren't meant for this world." I pressed my hand against the wall, my heart pounding. They weren't just firing me. They were erasing me. The final blow came a week later. Sloane's graduation party. They threw it at the Grand Ballroom of the Drake Hotel in Chicago. 300 guests. Politicians, investors, the city's elite. I wore a simple black dress from a department store. My mother took one look at me and said, "Oh, Alara, couldn't you have tried a little harder?" Table 27, near the kitchen. Try not to draw attention. So I sat at table 27, hidden behind a pillar, while my father stood on the main stage under a massive portrait of Sloane. He raised his glass. Tonight, I'm not just celebrating my daughter's achievements. I'm announcing her future. Upon my retirement, Sloane Vance will be the new CEO of Sterling Rose Holdings, and she will inherit my entire estate. The room erupted in applause. 300 people celebrating my erasure, and not a single one of them looked back at table 27. I sat there, frozen, feeling the full weight of 28 years of being the invisible one, the dumb one, the one who didn't matter. And then, through the crowd, a man in a gray suit began walking toward me. He was older, in his 60s, with silver hair and a serious face. He didn't look at anyone else. He walked straight to my table. "Miss Vance?" he said. I looked up, confused. "Yes?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was sealed with red wax. "My name is Arthur Sterling. I was your grandmother's attorney." My breath caught in my throat. "She left strict instructions," he said, his voice low. "I was to deliver this to you on the day your family publicly wrote you out of their story." He placed the envelope in my trembling hands. I believe that just happened. I couldn't breathe. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. Heavy with secrets. Heavy with my grandmother's love. Heavy with the weight of everything that was about to change. Mr. Sterling, Arthur, didn't move. He just stood there, watching me with those calm, knowing eyes. "Read it," he said quietly. But not here. I looked back at the ballroom. My father was still on stage, posing for photos with Sloane. My mother was working the room, accepting congratulations like she'd earned them herself. 300 people celebrating a future that had no room for me. I slipped out the service entrance. The hallway outside the kitchen was empty. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere behind me, dishes clattered and cooks shouted in Spanish. I leaned against the cold concrete wall and broke the wax seal. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unfold the papers. "I, Rosalind Marie Vance, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous wills and testaments." The legal language swam in front of me. I blinked hard, forcing the letters to stay still. And then I found it. A paragraph halfway down the page. "To my granddaughter, Alara Rose Vance, I bequeath 51% of my shares in Sterling Rose Holdings LLC, currently valued at approximately $48 million, along with all voting rights associated therewith." I read it again. And again. The words didn't change. 51%. Controlling interest. My grandmother had just made me the majority. Shareholder of a multi-million-dollar company. This bequest is made with full knowledge of my son. Harold's treatment of Alara, she has been excluded, diminished, and denied opportunity, not due to lack of ability, but due to lack of support. Alara is not slow. Alara was abandoned, and I will not allow her father's prejudice to continue after my death. Tears blurred my vision. Grandma Rose had seen everything. Every Christmas dinner where they laughed at me. Every family photo where they positioned me in the back. Every conversation that ended with, "And Alara is here too." She saw, and she planned. I kept reading. There was a condition. To activate this bequest, Alara must formally request an emergency board meeting within 72 hours of receiving this document. Failure to act within this window will render this will null and void. 72 hours. The deadline was Sunday at 8:30 p.m. 3 days to decide if I had the courage to burn my family's world to the ground. Arthur appeared beside me. He hadn't left. "Your grandmother knew you," he said softly. "She knew that if she gave you unlimited time, you'd talk yourself out of it. You'd convince yourself that they'd eventually love you if you just waited long enough." I looked at him, my eyes still wet. "The deadline isn't a punishment, Alara. It's permission. Permission to stop waiting for people who will never see you. Permission to take what's rightfully yours." That night I went back to my tiny apartment in Logan Square. 2 roommates, paper-thin walls, a mattress on the floor. I sat on that mattress with the wooden box Grandma Rose had given me years ago. The one she said to open when the time was right. The time was right. I lifted the lid. Inside, there was a handwritten letter on her personal stationery and a USB drive. I unfolded the letter first. "My dearest Alara, If you're reading this, then Arthur has done his job, and your father has done exactly what I feared he would. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive, but I can protect you now. The USB drive contains something your father hoped I'd forgotten. In 2018, Harold proposed a resolution to strip me of my voting rights. He said I was too old to understand the business. The real reason? He wanted total control, and I was in his way. The board rejected his proposal, but I never forgot what he tried to do. And I never forgave him for the way he treated you to justify it, as if diminishing. You somehow proved I was unfit. Use this wisely, Alara, not for revenge. For justice. All my love. Grandma Rose. I plugged in the USB drive. There was one file, a recording of that 2018 board meeting. My father's voice filled my tiny room. My mother is 81 years old. She doesn't understand modern business. I moved to reduce her voting rights to 10%. I listened to the whole thing. The coldness in his voice. The way he dismissed the woman who built everything he had. The way he talked about her like she was a problem to be solved. And then I made a decision. The next morning, I called Arthur Sterling. I want to request that emergency board meeting. He didn't sound surprised. I'll start drafting the paperwork. You'll need 3 board members to sign the petition. Do you know anyone who might support you? I thought about the tension I'd observed during my years in the copy room. The executives who left my father's office with tight jaws. The board members who stopped smiling when he walked in. I know exactly who to call. Margaret Eleanor Croft was first. She'd been on the board for 30 years. She'd worked alongside my grandmother since the beginning. When I called her, she laughed. A warm, knowing laugh. Ilara Vance, your grandmother told me this day would come. She said you had steel underneath all that quiet. What do you need? 2 other board members agreed within hours. Richard Morrison and Susan Park. Both of them had felt my father's arrogance firsthand. Both of them remembered my grandmother with genuine respect. By Wednesday morning, the petition was filed. An emergency board meeting was scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. My father found out at 4 p.m. that same day. I know because Sloane called me 45 minutes later, her voice shaking with fury. What did you do, Alara? I was sitting in my apartment, looking at my grandmother's portrait on my phone. I don't know what you're talking about. Dad just got a notice. Emergency board meeting. Requested by Eleanor Croft and 2 others. What did you do? Maybe they have concerns about company management. Don't play games with me. Her composure cracked. If you're trying to embarrass us. I'm not trying to do anything, Sloane. I'm just responding to an invitation. She hung up. 20 minutes later, my father stormed past my old cubicle at Sterling Rose Holdings. I wasn't there. I'd been fired, remember? But I heard from a friend who was. He slammed his office door so hard the windows rattled. And then he got on the phone. Ridiculous waste of time. Eleanor's probably going senile. We'll address her concerns and move on. No, I'm not worried. Alara, my God, she can barely read a spreadsheet. She's not a threat to anyone. I smiled when I heard that. For the first time in 28 years, being underestimated felt like a weapon. Friday morning, 9:45 a.m., Sterling Rose Tower, 42nd floor. I stepped off the elevator in a borrowed blazer, clutching a leather portfolio I'd bought at a thrift store for $12. The security guard at the boardroom door checked his tablet and frowned. You're not on the authorized attendee list, ma'am. Before I could respond, a voice cut through the air behind me. What is she doing here? I turned. Sloane stood there, flawless in a Navy power suit. Our father appeared behind her, flanked by 2 senior executives. Harold Vance looked at me the way he always did, like I was a stain he couldn't quite scrub out. Alara, go home. This doesn't concern you. And then, from inside the boardroom, a voice I'd been waiting to hear. Yes, it does. Eleanor Croft appeared in the doorway. 73 years old, silver-haired, standing with the quiet authority of someone who'd been breaking glass ceilings when my father was still in diapers. I invited her. She has standing to address this board. Let her in. My father's jaw tightened. For one beautiful moment, he had nothing to say. The boardroom was exactly how I'd imagined it. Polished mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, portraits of past executives watching from the walls, including my grandmother, right above the fireplace. 12 board members took their seats. My father at the head of the table, Sloane beside him, not officially a member yet, but positioned as his heir. I was directed to a chair at the far end, the children's table of corporate power. Arthur Sterling sat in the corner with his briefcase. He caught my eye and nodded once. Robert Chen, the board chairman, called the meeting to order. This emergency session was requested by Eleanor Croft, Richard Morrison, and Susan Park. Eleanor, you have the floor. Eleanor Croft stood. Thank you, Robert. I'll keep this brief. She gestured toward me. The matter concerns a document that has recently come to light, one that affects the ownership structure of this company. I yield my time to Miss Alara Vance. All eyes turned to me. Sloane smirked. My father leaned back with theatrical boredom. I stood. My hands were steady. Thank you, Mrs. Croft. What I'm about to present may surprise some of you. I ask only that you listen to the evidence before reaching conclusions. My father raised his hand. Robert, before we waste the board's valuable time. He stood, buttoning his jacket. I need to provide context. This is my daughter. I love her, but she's not qualified to address this board on any business matter. She worked in an administrative role. She has no legal training, no financial background. Sloane jumped in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Alara also has dyslexia. She struggles with reading. We've tried to support her, but she shrugged elegantly. Some limitations can't be overcome. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Thank you for that summary, I said calmly. But I'm not here to discuss my reading ability. Pulled a document from my portfolio. I'm here to discuss this. I held up the will. This is the last will and testament of Rosalind Vance, founder of this company. Notarized September 12, 2019. My father's face drained of color. That's impossible. My mother's will was executed in 2015. I have a copy. You have a copy of her previous will. My voice stayed level. Under Illinois law, a subsequent valid will automatically revokes all prior documents. This will was executed 4 years after the one you possess. I slid the document to Robert Chen. Mr. Sterling, would you please confirm the authenticity? Arthur rose. I'm Arthur Sterling, partner at Sterling & Associates. I served as Rosalind Vance's personal attorney from 2008 until her death. I can confirm this will was executed in my presence on September 12, 2019. It was witnessed by 2 independent notaries. Robert Chen studied the document. His eyebrows rose. This will bequeath 51% of Sterling Rose Holdings shares. He looked up at me. To you, Miss Vance. Murmurs rippled around the table. That's a forgery, Sloane said, but her voice had lost its confidence. It's not. Arthur's response was immediate, and I'd advise against accusing a reputable law firm of fraud without evidence. My father slammed his palm on the table. This is absurd. My mother was ill. She was being manipulated. Manipulated? I pulled out my phone. Perhaps you'd like to explain this then. I pressed play on the 2018 board meeting recording. My father's voice filled the room. My mother is 81 years old. She doesn't understand modern business. I moved to reduce her voting rights to 10%. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face had turned purple. That recording, that was a private board discussion. She recorded it, as was her right as a shareholder. Robert Chen set down the will. His expression had hardened. Miss Vance, would you read the relevant passage aloud? For the record. I nodded, took a breath. To my granddaughter, Alara Rose Vance, I bequeath 51% of my shares in Sterling Rose Holdings LLC, along with all voting rights associated therewith. I paused, letting the words settle. This bequest is made with full knowledge of my son, Harold's treatment of Alara. She has been excluded, diminished, and denied opportunity, not due to lack of ability, but due to lack of support. Sloane made a choking sound. Alara is not slow. Alara was abandoned, and I will not allow her father's prejudice to continue after my death. I looked directly at my father. Harold has confused credentials with character. He marginalized Alara because she reminded him of the kind of person he refuses to be. My father said nothing. His hands were trembling. I built this company from nothing. I choose who carries it forward. I choose Alara. Robert Chen removed his reading glasses. Arthur, you can confirm this document is legally binding? I can. The 2015 will is superseded. As of this moment, Alara Vance is the majority shareholder of Sterling Rose Holdings. Eleanor Croft smiled quietly. Richard Morrison and Susan Park exchanged glances. And for the first time in my life, I watched my father look at me with something other than dismissal. It was fear. This doesn't prove anything, Sloane said, her voice brittle. Even if the will is valid, which we'll contest, Alara has no business experience. She can't run a company. I'm not asking to run the company. I addressed the full board. I'm asking you to examine the facts. I pulled the 2018 board minutes from my portfolio. March 14th, 2018. Harold Vance proposed Resolution 2018-07 to reduce Rosalind Vance's voting shares from 51% to 10%. His stated rationale? I found the passage. The founder is no longer capable of understanding modern business operations. That was taken out of context, my father said. The resolution failed by 2 votes. Rosalind's vote and Eleanor Croft's. I looked at Eleanor. Is that accurate? She nodded slowly. It is. Rosalind called me that night. She was devastated. Not because of the resolution, but because her own son had tried to take everything she'd built. This is ancient history, my father started. It's evidence. I cut him off. Evidence that my grandmother wasn't suffering from diminished capacity when she wrote that 2019 will. She was protecting herself from her own son, and she was protecting me. Robert Chen looked around the table. Does anyone have documentation contradicting what's been presented? Silence. Richard Morrison spoke. Robert, I think we need legal counsel to review these documents formally. Agreed. Chen checked his watch. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes. The board members rose. Conversations broke out in hushed tones. My father didn't move. He sat frozen, staring at his mother's portrait on the wall. 15 minutes stretched into 45. The board's legal counsel spent the entire time on the phone with Arthur Sterling, with Chase Private Client, with the Cook County Court Records Office. I sat alone at the end of the table. Arthur brought me water. Eleanor patted my shoulder. My father and Sloane huddled in the corner, their whispered argument growing increasingly heated. Finally, the lawyer returned and whispered in Robert Chen's ear. Chen's expression flickered, surprise then resignation. Please take your seats. The tension crystallized into something brittle. Our legal counsel has confirmed the following. Chen read from his notes. The will presented by Miss Vance is valid under Illinois law. It supersedes all previous testamentary documents, effective immediately. Hilara Vance holds 51% of Sterling Rose Holdings shares. Someone inhaled sharply. Additionally, Chen continued, as majority shareholder, Miss Vance has the right to propose motions to the board, including matters pertaining to executive leadership. He looked at me. Miss Vance, do you have any motions you wish to bring forward? I stood. My heart was pounding, but my voice held steady. I have one motion. My father rose from his seat. Robert, this is... Sit down, Harold. Chen's voice carried unexpected steel. Miss Vance has the floor. My father sat. His face had gone gray. I looked around the table at 12 people who, until an hour ago, had never considered me capable of anything. Now they waited for my decision. The power to destroy my father's career was in my hands. I thought about what my grandmother would want. I'm not proposing to remove Harold Vance as CEO. The tension in the room shifted. Sloane's head snapped up. Even Eleanor looked surprised. What I am proposing, I continued, is a vote of confidence. The board will decide whether Harold Vance retains their confidence as CEO of Sterling Rose Holdings. If the majority votes no confidence, he resigns. If the majority votes confidence, I will not interfere with operational leadership during my tenure as majority shareholder. This is absurd. Sloane stood. You're turning this into a spectacle. No. I met her eyes. This is corporate governance. The same process Grandma Rosalind established in our bylaws 40 years ago. If Dad has the board's confidence, he has nothing to worry about. Robert Chen studied me for a long moment. Something like respect flickered in his expression. Is there a second for this motion? Seconded. Eleanor Croft didn't hesitate. Then we'll vote. All those expressing confidence in Harold Vance as CEO, raise your hands. 4 hands went up. His allies, people who owed him favors. All those expressing no confidence. 7 hands rose. Robert Chen counted twice. Then he set down his pen. The motion carries. 7-4. Mr. Vance, the board has voted no confidence. Per section 14.3 of our bylaws, you have 30 days to tender your resignation. My father said nothing. He stood. He looked at me, really looked at me. For what might have been the first time in my life, I expected rage, hatred, threats. What I saw was worse, recognition. The understanding that he'd underestimated me so completely, that he'd lost everything. He walked out without a word. Epilogue, 6 months later. My mother calls me now. Not every week, but sometimes. We have lunch. It's awkward and careful and nothing like the relationship I dreamed of as a little girl. But it's honest. That's more than we ever had. Sloane and I get coffee on weekends. She's in therapy. Turns out being the golden child isn't a gift. It's a different kind of cage. We're learning each other, really learning, for the first time in our lives. My father doesn't call, but I see him sometimes at charity events. We nod, we move on. It's enough. I didn't become CEO. I didn't want to. Instead, I created a new division at Sterling Rose Holdings, Sustainable Development. We focus on green building practices, community impact, environmental responsibility, the kind of innovation my grandmother would have championed. My title is Director of Strategic Vision. My salary is $195,000 a year, plus dividends from my shares. But that's not the part that matters. What matters is the portrait of my grandmother that hangs in my apartment. Sometimes when the evening light hits it just right, I can almost see her smiling. She didn't leave me 51% of a company because I was better than Sloane. She left it to me because she knew I wouldn't let power corrupt me the way it corrupted my father. Dyslexia isn't my flaw. It's part of who I am. Like my visual memory. My patience, my ability to see patterns others miss. The things that made me slow in my parents' eyes were the same things that made me see the truth when everyone else looked away. My grandmother judged worth by character, by kindness, by the way people treat those who can't fight back. And now, finally, I get to judge my own worth. Not by my parents' standards, not by my sister's achievements, by my own measure, my own truth. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you've ever been the overlooked one, the dismissed one, the one they said would never amount to anything, I want you to know something. You don't need a secret inheritance to prove your value, but you do need to give yourself permission to stop seeking approval from people who will never give it. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. They let you decide who gets access to your life. My family hurt me for 28 years, but I didn't need to hurt them back to find peace. I just needed to stop waiting for them to see me and start seeing myself. That's the real inheritance my grandmother left me, and nobody can ever take it. Away.subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who found the courage to stand up for themselves. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And leave a comment telling me your story. I read every single one.